Alright, if you guys haven't forgotten about me, here's back with another video. Kind of a follow-up video for the last one I uploaded, which was my initial thoughts on Black Swan and how she compared to Kafka, the current best dot character in general. And well, I kinda made a mistake on one of the segments for Black Swan. If you watched that video, at least for the first 3 to 4 hours of his upload, you probably already know what I'm talking about, but as soon as you guys commented about it, I went ahead and deleted that segment completely. It's still a decent watch though. If you want to know my thoughts on Kafka and Black Swan, you can check that video out. I'll link it in the description. But anyways, after doing some research and some more calcs for these past few days, I'm making this video both, as I already said, a follow-up for my last video, but also focusing more on the team's side of things and how they perform, as a lot of you were asking for that. Of course, as usual, these are just my personal thoughts on these characters based on my testing and experience with them, and you are free to have your own opinions on them as well. I fully respect that. So with that out of the way, I'm Sho, and let's once again talk about Black Swan. So the first team or pair to talk about is Sampo. As a 4-star character who specializes in applying dots, any teams that works with dots would always appreciate him. And with Black Swan, he helps to massively increase her dot application. As we already know that in terms of just dot application, Black Swan is probably the best around, but she doesn't get to fully max out her potential if she's alone. We know that a lot of her dot application comes from her passive and talent, which says if the enemy already has different dots or receive dot on their turn, they get inflicted with more stacks of sacrament. And the more stacks you have, the better. Not only it increases the multiplier of sacrament, it also adds more unique effects like being able to hit adjacent targets or ignoring defense. But without those other effects, her whole kit is not so much better than, let's say, Sampo, with just better multiplier for sacrament than Windshear. That's why Sampo becomes such a great pair for Black Swan. But it's not just a one-way bonus. Sampo also benefits from Black Swan a lot. Black Swan has like a 20% defense down in her skill, which lasts for 3 turns. And compared to the damage supports like damage bonus or attack boost, which are all multipliers on the character's side, something like defense down, which is a multiplier on the enemy's side, results in more damage, especially for dots. Also, since there is no detonator here like Kafka, except for maybe Sampo C4, resulting in most of the damage coming from proccing the dots. The buff from Sampo's ultimate, which increases the dot damage, and then Black Swan's ultimate, which increases the damage taken by the enemy in their own turn, really helps to increase the overall damage of this team. So they both benefit from each other quite a lot. And this is probably the best 4-star character to pair up with Black Swan. The chart shows how much damage each character contributes to the team. It's tested against 3 targets, which is probably the best situation for dot teams. And I went for a 3-turn rotation. Ruanmei is always a staple for any dot teams with her exceptional team-wide buffs, and I used Locha here because he generates a lot of skill points. And here is a point, like you really need to think about skill points when you are playing Black Swan. Sure, her skill's defense down lasts for 3 turns, but for a character with no energy generation traces, getting a 130 ultimate cost is kinda stupid. You're looking for a 4 to 5 turn ultimate, which is not ideal, especially for an ultimate which only lasts for 2 turns. Either you skill constantly with her or you use a character like Huohuo, which gives energy. I just went with the first path, as it also maximizes the sacrament stacks. Please keep in mind that these calcs are based on my preferred builds for these characters. Your teams might do different things. This is just a simple example. For let's say if you were to use this team, they would perform kinda similar to this. But that aside, this is a really good team, even if you have E0 Sampo and if you don't have Kafka. But why just talk about this? Let's just see another team. Another character to pair up with Sampo, probably one that most players want, Kafka, for a Kafka Sampo team. We all know this team has been played a lot of times and is a really good team for Kafka. Here as well, both Kafka and Sampo benefits from each other quite a bit, as Kafka mostly gets her damage from detonating dots. The huge amount of Windshear stack she gets to detonate from Sampo is really helpful, not only for the damage but also for the energy. The more dots the enemy has, the more the damage Kafka deals, and the more energy she gets when she defeats the enemy. And since Sampo does have quite of an AoE, Kafka's ultimate hits like a truck when she detonates all dots. And same for Sampo, he gets to help Kafka's damage, not as a damage dealer himself, but as like an amplifier, sort of. He provides the dots for Kafka to detonate, but that also hinders Sampo's overall damage a bit. Like when you compare it to the Black Swan team, you can clearly see that Sampo's own damage is much higher with Black Swan than Kafka. Sampo really benefits more from Black Swan than Kafka. Well, that's to be expected, as Black Swan does have way more damage buffs in her kit, which really helps Sampo shine more than when he is with Kafka. Not just for for Sampo alone, like if we were to compare the damage of the entire team, it seems Black Swan team did perform a bit better than Kafka, which says a lot, as there's a lot of arguments of who is better, like if you can get only one, who should you pick? And I myself made a video about it, and in that I recommended Kafka, which is still true in my opinion. But when we look at the numbers, Kafka might not seem that good, but there is one more factor to that damage that is not mentioned in any charts whatsoever, and I'll go in detail on that. But before that, let's look at the best team for both characters. A Black Swan Kafka team. You know, like when you have two apples in each of your hands and you are choosing between them and thinking which one is better, the best solution is probably why not take both. And this is exactly that. This is the best pair up for both Kafka and Black Swan. You have Black Swan as the best dot applicator and you have Kafka as the detonator for all those dots. You know, when I was talking about front load and back loaded damage, this is the combination of them both. Kafka was being held back with the low multipliers of Sampo's wind shear, and Black Swan was being held back from just being too reliant on her dots, which only does damage in the enemy's turn. But both Kafka and Black Swan fixes each other's problems. In terms of damage contribution, of course Kafka is doing the most. Well, this is to be expected. Kafka's kit is all about this. If you pair her with better dot characters, she will do more damage. As for Black Swan, her damage is lowered compared to her pair with Sampo because of the lack of other dots present in the enemy. As we all know that Black Swan has a lot of dot application in her, but that's because she gets more sacrament stacks if there are other dots present in the enemy. That's why when she was paired with Sampo, her damage was super high, because then all enemies had like 7 to 10 stacks of sacrament on them. But here that's not the case, at least not to that extent. Most Kafka can do is apply shock through her follow-up attacks and her ultimate. That's why Black Swan does not get to stack sacrament that much. And not just that, Black Swan also benefits quite a lot from the 30% dot damage boost from Sampo's ultimate, which might not seem that much, but still, it adds up. But the overall damage of this team is still way ahead of any other teams for both of them. Simply if you compare these three variants, the Kafka Black Swan team is around 11% better than the Sampo Black Swan team, and around 18% better than the Kafka Sampo team. I think this is a pretty decent interpretation of the teams. Of course, there are a lot of other team variants like with Gwenaifen or Luca. I just took which was the best, and Sampo is the king. Even though players don't like playing him, you can't deny how good he is. But that aside, what is the point of this? Well, it comes back full circle again to the same question. Who is better? Oh my god, how many times do I have to do this? Well, I wouldn't have made this video as I already made a video on this topic, but it was kind of a mess and I didn't have that much info on it. So what's the verdict? Does this change something? And it doesn't. I still recommend Kafka. But hear me out first, alright? We can see that Kafka Sampo team is a bit lower when compared to Black Swan, but there is more to this. Like when I was talking about the other factor that is not shown in the charts, that is going to be the damage ceiling. I think Kafka as a character has much higher damage ceiling than Black Swan. Let me elaborate on that. Even though here we see that Kafka's team is below Black Swan, but when I did the calcs for this, I made both Kafka and the enemy have same number of turns, which is not ideal for Kafka. At this point, we all know the 134 speed breakpoint, which everyone tries to target. Or was it 132? I forgot. But anyways, we all know that because it lets you take 2 turns in the first cycle, and usually enemies does not take that many turns. So taking this scenario was a bit unfair for Kafka, who should be able to take more turns than the enemy with ease. It was ideal for Black Swan, but not for Kafka. Enemies taking more turns is great for Black Swan because it lets the dot deal more damage, but you can't decide how the enemy takes turns, or at least make them take more turns. You can certainly slow them down for sure, but our characters taking more turns, which we do have control over, is great for Kafka. Like we see players building like 160 speed Kafkas, which is crazy, and you add one main there and that gets her to 170 speed. Holy hell. Her light cone, patience is all you need, certainly helps with that, but it also gives her more dots. But we are not talking about light cones here. Kafka is a character who has full control over her damage, but Black Swan is different. Her being reliant on the enemy is what holds her back. It's what holds this dot playstyle back. Alright, for now, let's just speculate a bit. What if we get an enemy who is extremely slow but counters every time you hit the enemy? Here, since he is so slow, Kafka can go more often and deal more damage, but Black Swan have to wait for the enemy to take turn. Sure, you can stack more dots on the enemy, but there is always a limit to how much stacks you can apply. And in this current comparison as well, if I were to add just one more skill proc for Kafka, she gets ahead of Black Swan, and Kafka allows that to happen. Let's talk about builds. Kafka is not that stat hungry. Yeah, sure, you want speed, you want attack, and you do want effect hit rate, but not as much as other dot characters. Since all her dots has such high chance to land, you don't really need that much effect hit rate. But Black Swan on the other hand, she is a bit stat hungry. As usual for all dot characters, you want attack, you want speed, but you want quite a lot of effect hit rate on her. She does not have that high chance to apply sacrament, it's like 65%, so to actively land that, you need around 120% effect hit rate. And that also matches with one of her passives, which gives damage bonus based on how much effect hit rate you have. So well, sure, that does helps a bit, but still, Black Swan is a bit, not much, but a bit stat hungry. These are some of the reasons why I still lean toward Kafka as the better choice if you don't have either of them, but they are really pretty close in similar investment. Both have their own perks. Like for Black Swan, you can use her like a Pella for non-ice teams. She has defense down in her skill, which lasts for 3 turns. And with her constant dots on the enemy, the dot set might become a lot more useful than just a set for dot characters. Any DPS will be able to use that set. At max stacks, it gives 18% defense ignore, which is quite a lot. And if you have max stacks available, then this set will probably beat the quantum set as the staple for any DPS. These are just some thoughts on other use cases for Black Swan, then just tied down to dot teams. Both of these characters have really good kits and are worth pulling. And for my personal recommendations, I do recommend Kafka over Black Swan as a better investment for dot teams. But that is just my personal opinion though. I don't know how many times I've said that by now, but well, you guys are also free to have your own thoughts on any character, and I'd always respect that. I just wanted to make this video to give proper reasons and info which were lacking a bit in the last video. Overall, these are just a pack of numbers, and I know majority of you guys don't even care about numbers, because numbers will never be able to decide exact value of a character for every account. But it does help as somewhat of an example, like yeah, these teams can work like this. And that is what I wanted to share through this video. I myself will be pulling for Kafka live in a few days, or at least try to get her. This is my only chance, God knows when she'll be back. So I hope to see you guys there to share my joy if I manage to get her, or sorrow if I lose 50-50. Also, if you guys have any questions you want to ask me or share your own thoughts, be sure to come to the stream. With that, thank you very much for watching. If you found this video helpful, drop a like and subscribe for more Star Rail and Genshin content from yours truly. I had a lot of fun doing the calcs and overall making this video. And if you guys loved it and want more, drop a comment and I might just start doing this kind of team comparisons for every upcoming character, which would be a lot of fun. After this video, the next 2 videos might be on Genshin, as the Genshin livestream is right around the corner, so I hope you're looking forward to that. That aside, thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next video.